Welcome, everyone, to another profound exploration into the timeless wisdom of Buddhism. If you're seeking answers to life's most pressing questions, or perhaps yearning for deeper peace amidst the chaos of everyday living, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into one of the most transformative teachings in all of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. These aren't just ancient doctrines, they're a universal roadmap to understanding and overcoming the suffering we all face in life. Whether you're new to Buddhist teachings or looking to deepen your practice, the insights we'll uncover today can change the way you approach life, happiness, and even suffering itself. We'll explore how the Buddha identified suffering, the root causes of it, and most importantly, the path to end it. And it's not just theoretical, this is something that can be applied right now, in your own life, no matter where you are on your journey. So, if you're ready to embark on this path of wisdom and awakening, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel Buddhist Balance, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another video like this. Let's dive in and discover how these ancient truths hold the key to real, lasting peace. Part 1, the first noble truth, the reality of suffering. The Buddha's recognition of suffering, or Dukkha, is the foundation of his entire teaching. He did not approach suffering as something that should be feared or avoided, but as an inevitable part of human existence, something we must all face. This first noble truth is often misunderstood. People hear the word suffering and imagine it to be only physical pain or intense emotional distress. But the Buddha's conception of suffering encompasses much more. It extends to subtle forms of dissatisfaction, discontent, and existential unease that color our daily lives. It is not simply pain, but the profound sense that something is missing, something is incomplete, or that life is somehow not enough. The Buddha taught that suffering is universal. It does not discriminate based on social class, wealth, or status. Whether one is a beggar or a billionaire, a saint or a sinner, the experience of suffering touches all human beings. This is one of the most important aspects of the first noble truth. Its universality. No one escapes it. And it's this very inevitability that calls for us to confront it head-on. To understand suffering deeply is the first step in addressing it and ultimately overcoming it. Personal insights. The first noble truth isn't about dwelling on suffering in a negative way. It's about recognizing that life is a mixture of joy and pain. And that pain isn't something to be avoided at all costs. The Buddha's teaching is not a grim resignation to suffering, but an invitation to understand its roots and nature. By acknowledging suffering, we remove the veil of illusion that so often clouds our view of reality. We no longer trick ourselves into believing that happiness can be found in fleeting pleasures, which only set us up for disappointment. Instead, we begin to see that true peace can only come from understanding the impermanence of life, not from clinging to what we think will make us happy. Take the example of material possessions. Imagine saving for years to buy your dream car. You've done all the research. You've chosen the perfect model. And finally, after months of hard work and anticipation, you drive off the lot with your new purchase. The excitement at first is unmatched. But as time goes on, the thrill fades. and the car becomes just another object. It loses its charm, and you begin to feel that yearning for something else. A newer model, a bigger house, or maybe a better career. This cycle of seeking external sources of happiness, only to see the happiness fade and leave behind a sense of emptiness, is precisely what the Buddha meant by suffering. In the early days of my own pursuit of material success, I found this cycle to be all too familiar. I chased after new things, thinking they would bring me lasting happiness. Yet each new acquisition only led to an inevitable sense of dissatisfaction. The excitement of acquiring something new would last for only a short while before the thrill wore off. This experience was not a personal failing, but a fundamental aspect of the human condition. As described in the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha warned against clinging to these temporary joys, and instead advocated for a shift in perspective. True happiness, he taught, comes not from external acquisitions but from inner peace and understanding. Reflection. The first noble truth requires us to confront reality with courage and clarity. It's not a call to resign ourselves to despair or to live in constant fear of suffering. Rather, it's an invitation to face suffering directly, to understand it deeply, and to seek ways to overcome it. Think of it like diagnosing an illness. If you want to heal, you need to understand what is wrong with your body. In the same way, to heal from suffering, you must understand its nature. Ignorance of suffering only leads to more suffering. This is why the Buddha's teachings begin with this profound and simple truth: that suffering is not something that can be avoided, but something to be understood. Once we acknowledge that suffering is part of life, we begin to shift our approach. We stop looking for happiness in fleeting pleasures, and start looking for something more enduring. It is not that pleasure is inherently bad, but rather that we often mistake temporary pleasure for lasting happiness. The key to understanding the first noble truth lies in recognizing the impermanence of all things. This includes the happiness that arises from external circumstances. Lesson learned. By accepting the first noble truth, we gain a deeper understanding of life and of ourselves. The Buddha does not teach that suffering is to be avoided at all costs, but that suffering is a natural part of the human condition that we must face with clarity. Once we truly understand suffering, we can begin to break free from its grip. It is important to understand that suffering does not define us. Rather, our relationship to suffering defines us. If we live in denial of suffering, we remain trapped in the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. But if we accept it as part of the human experience, we open ourselves up to deeper wisdom and peace. As Buddha himself said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It is our attachment to things that causes suffering, not the things themselves. By letting go of attachment, we free ourselves from the suffering that arises from it. As we look to historical examples, we see that the greatest minds in history were often the ones who acknowledged suffering and sought to transcend it. Take, for instance, the story of Socrates, who, in his quest for wisdom, was unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths about life, mortality, and the human condition. He knew that suffering, in the form of death, was inevitable, and yet he faced it with remarkable equanimity. He did not seek to escape suffering, but to understand it. And in that understanding, he found a kind of peace that transcended fear. Similarly, the Dalai Lama, in his teachings, often speaks of the reality of suffering but encourages people not to become overwhelmed by it. Instead, he advocates for developing a compassionate response to suffering, both our own and others. He teaches that by embracing suffering with mindfulness and compassion, we can transform it into a path toward greater wisdom and peace. In conclusion, the First Noble Truth offers us a profound lens through which to view our lives. It does not ask us to retreat into despair, but to face reality with wisdom and courage. By acknowledging that suffering is an inevitable part of life, we free ourselves from the delusion that happiness can be found in external circumstances. Instead, we begin the journey toward lasting peace, peace that is not dependent on external conditions, but that arises from understanding the nature of suffering and the impermanence of all things. This understanding is not a one-time revelation, but a continual practice. As we learn to see the world through the lens of the First Noble Truth, we begin to let go of our attachments. And in doing so, we move closer to true freedom. Part 2, The Cause of Suffering, the Second Noble Truth. The Second Noble Truth explores the root cause of suffering, tanha, often translated as craving or desire. While the First Noble Truth acknowledges that suffering is an unavoidable part of life, the Second Noble Truth takes it a step further, revealing that the source of our suffering lies in our cravings, attachments, and desires. This craving is not just about material possessions or indulgence in sensory pleasures. It encompasses a deeper, more subtle form of attachment to ideas, beliefs, and even to our own identities. The Buddha identified three main forms of craving. 1. Craving for sensual pleasures, the desire for physical pleasures such as food, sex, comfort, and luxury. 2. Craving for existence, the desire to prolong our existence, to stay youthful, to avoid aging or death. 3. Craving for non-existence, the desire to escape life altogether, to rid ourselves of suffering, to achieve annihilation or oblivion. What makes this Second Noble Truth particularly profound is that it uncovers how suffering is perpetuated by the constant yearning for what we do not have, or the avoidance of what we fear. Our mind is constantly in a state of craving, either desiring what we don't have or pushing away what we do not want. This ceaseless craving fuels the cycle of dissatisfaction that keeps us trapped in suffering. Personal insights. To truly grasp the Second Noble Truth, we need to explore how craving manifests in our daily lives. Most of us are familiar with the feeling of craving, whether it's the longing for a new possession, the desire for success, or the fear of losing something precious. But craving doesn't just arise from tangible things. It also stems from our attachment to ideas and outcomes. For instance, consider a person who is always striving for recognition, whether at work, in relationships, or in social circles. This craving for validation becomes a constant source of anxiety, as the person never feels truly secure in themselves, always fearing rejection or failure. I remember a time when I was deeply attached to a particular outcome in my life. I had set my sights on a specific goal, convinced that its achievement would bring me lasting happiness and fulfillment. However, when I finally reached that goal, I found that the satisfaction I expected was fleeting. The momentary joy quickly faded, and I found myself craving something else. This endless cycle of craving was exactly what the Buddha warned against. The problem was not the goal itself, but the belief that reaching it would finally end my dissatisfaction. It's an exhausting, endless loop. Story. To illustrate how craving operates, we can look at the life of Alexander the Great, one of history's most famous conquerors. Alexander's life was marked by insatiable ambition. Despite conquering vast empires and achieving what many would consider the pinnacle of success, Alexander was never satisfied. He kept pushing further, never content with his accomplishments, always striving for more territory, more wealth, more power. This relentless craving ultimately led to his untimely death at the age of 32. His life demonstrates the destructive nature of craving for power and control. It wasn't his victories that caused his downfall. It was the unending desire for more, which left him restless and never truly at peace. Similarly, Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was known for his relentless pursuit of perfection and innovation. Although he revolutionized the tech industry and amassed wealth, he struggled with an internal craving for control and success, which at times alienated him from those around him. Jobs' story shows us that craving, whether it's the desire for control, recognition, or success, can often cause a sense of internal unrest, even for someone who achieved extraordinary accomplishments. Satisfaction remained elusive as the craving for the next big thing never truly ceased. Reflection. The Buddha's insight into craving is revolutionary. He did not just say that we suffer because of external circumstances. He went deeper and pointed to our internal craving as the true source of suffering. When we are attached to certain outcomes, whether they are material possessions, success, or even relationships, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. Why? Because these things are impermanent, subject to change, decay, and loss. The Buddha's genius was in showing that our craving for permanence, stability, and control is the root of our suffering. Think of craving as trying to hold water in your hands. The more you grasp, the more it slips away, no matter how tightly you try to control the situation. The outcome is always uncertain. The Buddha did not advocate for a life devoid of desire, but for understanding the impermanent nature of desire itself. When we realize that craving is an inherent part of human nature, but that it cannot bring lasting happiness, we begin to loosen our grip on the things we hold dear. Lesson learned. The second noble truth teaches us that suffering does not come from external circumstances, but from our attachment to them. It is our craving for pleasure, permanence, and control that keeps us trapped in the cycle of dissatisfaction. Recognizing the impermanence of all things is the first step in releasing these attachments. The key is not to eliminate desire entirely but to understand it for what it is: fleeting, transient, and ultimately unsatisfying. By letting go of our attachments and cravings, we can cultivate a sense of freedom. This doesn't mean that we become indifferent or detached from the world. Rather, It means that we approach life with a sense of equanimity, fully engaged but not overly attached. The more we let go of the need for things to be a certain way, the more peace we find. The path to liberation begins with recognizing and transforming our cravings. The Buddha did not simply tell us to suppress our desires. He encouraged us to examine them, to understand their origins, and ultimately, to release them. Through this process of mindfulness and awareness, we find the freedom that lies beyond craving, the freedom to experience life as it truly is, without the chains of attachment. In the end, the second noble truth challenges us to ask, what do I truly desire? And more importantly, why do I desire it? Through this introspection, we can begin to see how our attachments shape our experience and start to make choices that lead to deeper, more lasting happiness. Part 3, The End of Suffering, the Third Noble Truth. The third noble truth reveals the possibility of ending suffering, dukkha, through the cessation of craving, attachment, and ignorance. This cessation is referred to as nirvana, a state of liberation, freedom, and ultimate peace. Unlike common misconceptions, nirvana is not a distant, otherworldly paradise or a place to be reached after death. Rather, it is a state of being that can be realized in this very life, a liberation from the cycle of suffering that we experience day to day. Nirvana represents the extinction of the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance, the mental afflictions that perpetuate the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. When these afflictions are uprooted, we enter a state of profound peace and clarity. Nirvana is the end of the craving and the attachments that bind us to the cycle of dissatisfaction. It is the realization that happiness does not lie in the pursuit of external things, but in the cessation of internal desires and attachments. It is the liberation from the false belief that fulfillment can be found in the transient, impermanent aspects of life. Personal insights. One of the most profound aspects of the third noble truth is its radical simplicity. Suffering ends when the cause of suffering, craving, is extinguished. Nirvana is not about achieving something new or acquiring more. It is about letting go of the illusions that keep us trapped in cycles of desire, fear, and dissatisfaction. When we stop grasping at things, whether they are material possessions, experiences, or even relationships, we open ourselves up to a deeper, more enduring peace. This peace is not something that is found outside ourselves. It is discovered when we release our attachments and let go of the constant craving for more. I have had moments in my own life when I caught glimpses of this freedom. It wasn't during moments of external success or material gain, but during moments of letting go, of releasing a grudge, of surrendering control, of accepting impermanence. It is in these moments that we experience a taste of nirvana, the deep, unconditional peace that comes from no longer being bound by craving. The paradox is that when we stop striving, we find the peace we were searching for all along. Story. The story of Sakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment serves as a powerful example of the cessation of suffering. After years of extreme ascetic practices and meditation, Siddhartha Gautama, who would become the Buddha, realized that neither indulgence in sensual pleasure nor self-mortification could lead to liberation. Instead, it was through the middle path, balancing wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, that he attained nirvana. During his enlightenment, Siddhartha sat beneath the Bodhi tree and vowed not to rise until he had attained the truth. He confronted Mara, the tempter, who represented his fears, desires, and attachments. Mara tried to distract Siddhartha with temptations and threats. But Siddhartha's mind remained calm and focused. He understood that suffering arose from attachment and craving. And he let go of both the desire for worldly happiness and the fear of death. In that moment of realization, Siddhartha became the Buddha, awakened, liberated, and free from the cycle of suffering. Similarly, Mahatma Gandhi found a form of liberation in his struggle for independence. But it was not through external victories. Gandhi's profound sense of peace came from his commitment to nonviolence and truth. He transcended his own cravings for power, recognition, and material success by living a life of simplicity and service. Gandhi's life is a testament to the idea that true freedom comes not from attaining more, but from releasing the attachments that bind us. Reflection. The third noble truth is often misunderstood. It is not about rejecting life or renouncing worldly pleasures, but about realizing that suffering arises from our attachments and cravings. When we free ourselves from these desires, we are able to experience the world without the distortions of craving and aversion. This truth invites us to explore the possibility of living in harmony with life as it is, free from the endless pursuit of more. It teaches us that lasting peace comes not from acquiring or achieving, but from letting go. Part 4, The Path to the End of Suffering, the Fourth Noble Truth. The fourth noble truth reveals the path to the cessation of suffering. It is called the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide that the Buddha outlined to help us navigate the complexities of life and transcend the suffering that arises from our desires and attachments. The path is not a single, linear journey but a holistic, integrated approach to life that involves the cultivation of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It is the means by which we can gradually reduce suffering, break free from the cycle of craving, and move toward the ultimate goal of nirvana. The Eightfold Path consists of 8 interconnected factors that work together to promote a life of balance, awareness, and liberation. These factors can be grouped into 3 categories: wisdom, prajna; ethical conduct, sila; and mental discipline, samadhi. It is important to understand that these aspects of the path are not separate or isolated, they are deeply interconnected and support each other. Progress in one area helps to strengthen the others, leading to a gradual transformation of the mind, body, and heart. Personal insights. The beauty of the Noble Eightfold Path lies in its practicality. It is not about renouncing the world or retreating into some form of isolation, rather, it offers a way to live fully in the world while remaining free from the attachments and distractions that cause suffering. It is about developing an inner clarity and balance that allows us to engage with the world in a mindful, compassionate, and wise way. Over time, this path leads us to the cessation of suffering and the cultivation of true happiness. The Eightfold Path is not a quick fix, it is a lifelong practice. But in my own experience, each step on the path brings a sense of peace and purpose that deepens over time. The more I practice the principles of the Eightfold Path, the more I notice a shift in my perspective and my reactions to life. It's as if the noise and confusion of the world begin to fade, and a clearer, more centered understanding emerges. This process is not about striving to be perfect, but about making continuous efforts toward improvement and balance. The 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. 1. Right view, or right understanding. This is the first step in the path, and it involves understanding the nature of reality as taught by the Buddha. It is about seeing the world as it truly is, understanding the 4 noble truths, and recognizing that suffering is part of life and that its cause is craving. Right view also involves the understanding of karma, the law of cause and effect, and how our actions, words, and thoughts shape our experiences. Example: if you think about the life of Nelson Mandela, he exemplified right view in his understanding of both the suffering caused by apartheid and the path to its end. Mandela saw that true liberation for his people would not come from violent revenge, but from reconciliation and understanding. His actions and decisions were informed by a deep understanding of both suffering and the way out of it. 2. Right intention, or right resolve. This involves cultivating thoughts that are aligned with the goal of ending suffering, thoughts that are rooted in compassion, kindness, and non-attachment. Right intention is the mental attitude we bring to our actions and decisions. It involves letting go of harmful intentions such as greed, hatred, and delusion, and replacing them with intentions rooted in love and wisdom. Story: Mahatma Gandhi once said, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." This statement reflects the essence of right intention. Gandhi's commitment to non-violence, ahimsa, and truth, satya, was not just about opposing injustice. It was rooted in the intention to create a society based on peace, equality, and respect for all people. His personal intentions were aligned with the greater goal of societal liberation. This is a perfect example of how right intention transcends mere thoughts and becomes a guiding force for our actions, transforming both the individual and the collective. 3. Right speech. This involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and in a way that is helpful to others. Right speech means refraining from lying, gossiping, or speaking in ways that are harmful or divisive. It encourages us to communicate with honesty, compassion, and mindfulness, aiming to foster understanding and harmony rather than discord. Example: consider Martin Luther King Jr., whose speeches were grounded in truth and the power of nonviolent resistance. His words inspired millions and helped to bring about social change through peaceful means. Right speech is not about silence but about speaking with purpose and integrity, using our words as a tool for peace and social transformation. 4. Right action. This involves acting ethically and in accordance with moral principles. Right action means avoiding harmful behaviors like stealing, killing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. It encourages us to engage in actions that promote the well-being of others and the environment, while also cultivating kindness and respect in our daily lives. Story: in the life of Mother Teresa, we see a vivid example of right action. Her life was dedicated to serving the poor and the sick, helping those in the greatest need. Her actions were driven by compassion and the desire to alleviate the suffering of others, aligning perfectly with the principles of right action. 5. Right livelihood. This involves earning a living in a way that does not harm others or contribute to suffering. Right livelihood encourages us to choose careers or professions that are ethical and contribute positively to society, avoiding jobs that exploit or harm others. Example: a person who works in healthcare, providing medical care to those in need, or in environmental conservation, protecting the planet, embodies right livelihood. On the other hand, a job that involves exploitation or harm to others, such as dealing in weapons or unethical industries, would not align with this principle. 6. Right effort. This involves making a conscious effort to cultivate positive states of mind and to overcome negative states. Right effort encourages us to work towards the development of wholesome qualities, such as compassion, patience, and wisdom, while striving to eliminate harmful tendencies like anger, greed, and ignorance. Example: a person who practices mindfulness and meditation daily is actively engaging in right effort. This effort is not about forceful striving but about a gentle, consistent application of effort to bring about mental clarity and emotional balance. 7. Right mindfulness. This involves being fully aware and present in each moment. Right mindfulness encourages us to develop an awareness of our thoughts, feelings, and actions without attachment or aversion. It is about observing ourselves and the world around us with clarity, accepting things as they are, and responding to them with wisdom. Example: mindfulness practitioners, such as those who follow the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, cultivate the ability to be present and mindful in every aspect of their daily lives. This practice helps them to remain calm, centered, and compassionate, even in challenging circumstances. 8. Right concentration. This involves developing deep mental focus and clarity through practices such as meditation. Right concentration helps to calm the mind and allow us to see things as they truly are, without the distortion of craving, aversion, or ignorance. It is the ability to direct the mind with precision and to enter states of deep meditation that lead to insight and liberation. Story. The story of Sakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree illustrates the power of right concentration. By focusing his mind through meditation, he overcame the distractions of Mara, the tempter, and attained nirvana. Right concentration is an essential part of the path, helping us to overcome the distractions of the world and reach profound states of peace and insight. Reflection. The Noble Eightfold Path is a comprehensive guide to living a life of balance and liberation. It is not about perfection or achieving immediate results, but about steady, continuous effort toward personal transformation. Each step on the path complements the others, and together they create a life of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. By following the Eightfold Path, we can gradually eliminate the causes of suffering and cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. It is a path that leads us to true freedom, not through external achievement, but through the cultivation of inner peace, compassion, and wisdom. Now, as we wrap up today's journey through the Four Noble Truths, I want to leave you with a powerful thought. These teachings are not just abstract concepts or philosophical musings, they are practical steps to live a more mindful, compassionate, and peaceful life. The Buddha showed us that by understanding the nature of suffering, And more importantly, understanding how to overcome it. We can live with true freedom. But remember, this is a path, a journey that requires practice, patience, and understanding. It's not about seeking instant results or expecting everything to change overnight. It's about cultivating wisdom and compassion day by day. And as we move forward together, I hope these teachings inspire you to take that first step, no matter how small, towards a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. If you found value in this video, I encourage you to like, comment, and share it with others who might benefit from this wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe to Buddhist Balance and join our community of seekers, where we explore how to live a balanced and peaceful life through the teachings of Buddhism. Thank you for watching, and may you find peace in every step you take on your path.